Today we're going to talk about subtracting fractions. We're going to do a couple different problems, and on each one the rigor is going to increase a little bit. The first one that we're going to do, we're going to start out with mixed numbers that have the same denominator. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to line up our problem like it's a normal subtraction problem. We're going to put 4 2/3 on top of 1 1/3. What we're going to go ahead and do next is we're just going to worry about the fractions. So since we're subtracting, we're going to go ahead and take away 2/3 minus 1/3. And we can do this right now because they both have the same denominator. So 2/3 minus 1/3 would leave us with 1/3. And now we're going to go ahead and worry about the whole numbers. So 4 wholes minus 1 whole will leave us with 3 wholes. So what we're looking at is 4 2/3 minus 1 1/3 will give us 3 1/3. On the next problem, our rigor is going to be increased a little bit. We're going to be doing the same thing, subtracting fractions, except now our denominators are going to be different. So our first step, we're going to line it up just like a normal subtraction problem. We have 3 3/4 minus 2 1/2. Now the important thing about our denominators being different is that we cannot subtract them right away. The first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take our fractions and we're going to have to make them have the same denominator. To make them have the same denominator, we're going to have to go ahead and do the butterfly. So off to the side here, I'm going to write 3/4 and 1/2. To make them have the same denominator, I'm going to be doing the butterfly trick. 3 times 2 would make 6. 4 times 1 would make 4. And the bottom of each fraction would be 8. So instead of 3/4, our fraction is now going to turn into 6/8. So I'm going to rewrite my entire problem. 3 6/8. Minus, instead of 2 1/2, we're going to have 4/8. And now we're going to follow the same steps as we did on the first one. First, we're going to subtract our fractions. 6/8 minus 4/8 will leave us with 2/8. 3 minus 2 will leave us with 1 whole. And we can actually take this one step further and simplify the problem. Since we know 2 and 8 are both going to be even, we can actually divide both of those by 2. And what that'll end up giving us is 1/4. So our final answer to 3 3/4 minus 2 1/2 would be 1 whole and 1/4. Now our next problem is going to be the most difficult, or the most rigorous. And the reason for that is because not only do we have unlike denominators, which means we're going to have to do the butterfly, but we're also going to see later that we're going to have to do regrouping. So our first step, just like the other two problems, is we're going to line it up. We're going to have 3 1/3 minus 1 1/2. So our first step, we're going to look at the fractions by itself, and we cannot subtract these right now because they do not have the same denominator. So we're going to have to do the butterfly. We're going to take 1/3 and we're going to take 1/2. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. And 3 times 2 is 6. So when we rewrite this problem now, our 1/3 will turn into 2/6. Our 1/2 will turn into 3/6. So we have 3 2/6 minus 1 and 3/6. Now we're at the same point as problem number 2, except there's one difference. So just like a normal problem, if I were to take 22 minus 13, I wouldn't be able to take away 3 from 2. I would have to borrow and regroup. So we're in the same situation over here. We can't take away 3 from 2. We can't take away 3 from 2. So we're gonna have to borrow. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna cross out the 3 and we're gonna turn it into 2. We're gonna take 1 from over here and we're gonna add 1 over here. Now that doesn't mean we just put a 1 right here and make it 12. That's not gonna be right. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add 1 whole. So what 1 whole would look like would be 6 over 6, because 6 over 6 is 1 whole. So what we did is we took a whole from over here, we went from 3 to 2, and we added it over here instead. So now what we have is our next step. Instead of having 2 6 and 6 6, what we really have is 8 6, because 2 plus 6 is 8. So now what we can do is we can just subtract. 8 6 minus 3 6 would give us 5 6, and 2 minus 1 is 1 whole, and we'd be left with 1 whole and 5 6. So the difference between this problem and the other problems is, well, first off, we had to do the butterfly because our denominators aren't the same. Once we got our denominators the same though, we couldn't take away 3 from 2. So what we had to do is we had to regroup, just like a normal subtraction problem. We had to borrow over here, and then we added that whole number back over here. So 6 over 6 would have been the whole number. Now, if it was in sevenths, our whole number would have been 7 over 7. If it was in eighths, we would have had 8 over 8. If it was in thirds, we would have added 3 over 3. So it all depends on what your fraction is in. So afterwards, we were able to subtract. 8 6 minus 3 6 left us with 5 6. 2 wholes minus 1 whole left us with 1 whole. Now we're going to go ahead and try the opposite operations using the same concepts. So instead of subtracting, now we're just going to go ahead and add, but we're going to follow the same steps. We're going to line them up. 4 and 3/4 plus 3 and 1/3. So first thing we're going to notice is we can't do anything with our fractions right now because our denominators aren't the same. We have a 4 and we have a 3. So to make our denominators the same, we're going to go ahead and do the butterfly trick. Okay, 3 times 3 will give us 9. 1 times 4 will give us 4. And 4 times 3 will give us 12 for the denominator. So what we're going to have is, instead of 4 and 3/4, we're going to have 4 and 9/12. Instead of 3 and 1/3, we're going to have 3 and 4/12. And then we can add. The tricky part about adding with fractions is going to be making sure that we regroup properly. So if we're looking at our whole, our fraction is cut into 12ths. So to make a whole, we would have to have 12 12ths. So if we go ahead and add 9 12ths plus 4 12ths, we're going to end up getting 13 12ths, which is bigger than a whole, and we can't have that. So here's what we're going to have to do. Let's draw it out. So we have 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we're going to have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we know is that to make a whole, we're going to have a group of 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is one group, one whole. So what we know that we're gonna have is, this is what we're gonna do. Instead of writing 13/12ths, we're gonna say that, okay, this is one whole, and I'm gonna put this one over here. This one that's left over, we're just gonna put it right here. So what we have left over is 1/12, but now we've added another whole in because there was 12/12ths. So 1 plus 4 plus 3 is gonna make 8. So we have a total of 8 and 1/12. So for this last one, we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing. First, we're adding, but we know we can't add these right now because they don't have the same denominator. So butterfly, 1/2, 2/3. 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 2 is 4, and 3 times 2 is 6. So what we're gonna have is the 1/2 is gonna turn into 3/6, and the 2/3 is gonna turn into 4/6. So we have 27 and 3/6 plus 13 and 4/6. Now we're gonna follow the same steps as last time. Just like up here, it took, because our denominator was 12, it took us to get to 12 to make a whole. So down here, since our denominator is 6, it's only gonna take us to 6 to get a whole. So right now we have 3, 1, 2, 3, plus 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And once again, it's gonna take 6 to make a whole. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're able to make one whole. So I'm gonna put the 1 right there in the ones place. And I know I'm left with 1 left over out of 6. So now I'm just gonna add the whole numbers. 1 plus 7 plus 3 makes 11, carry the 1. 1 plus 2 plus 1 is going to make 4. So 27 and 1/2 plus 13 and 2/3 will make 41 and 1/6. And once again, our whole number, we have to regroup once we get to 6, 6, because that makes a whole. So 3 plus 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a total of 7. So, but that made one whole, and then we had that 1 left over. So lastly, I'd like it if you could go ahead and try these 4 problems. If you're able to get these problems and you're understanding it, then that's good, you'll be set. If you wanna increase the rigor, go ahead and create your own word problems for it. So for instance, think of some subtraction signs or keywords for subtractions that you might use. How much more? What is the difference? Okay, think of some keywords for addition, like sum, all together, and create your own word problems and try and solve these problems with it.